Betrayal doesn't always arrive with a bang sometimes, it's hidden in plain sight. She was just scrolling mindlessly when she saw it, her sister glowing, holding a newborn, their parents by her side. A perfect family moment. But then her heart stopped. On the hospital table, right there in the frame, lay her husband's wallet and keychain. Familiar. Undeniable. Her hands trembled, but she typed, "Congratulations! Wish you all the best." Hit send. Then, she stood up, grabbed her keys and walked out the door. But what came next? No one could have imagined. In her office, bathed in the gentle spring sunlight, Violet Wilson gazed at the wedding photograph on her desk. That moment from 5 years ago, which should have been filled with joy, now held an unnatural shadow. Her parents' smiles, though present, barely masked their dissatisfaction, a feeling that still gripped her heart to this day. In the photo, she wore a pure white wedding dress nestled in Basil's arms. It should have been a moment of happiness, but her parents' subtle expressions had cast a pall over the entire scene. Growing up with her sister in a quiet residential area of suburban Hartford, Connecticut, those memories were anything but peaceful. Caitlin will surely find a job helping people. She remembered her mother's voice, praising her sister as if it were yesterday. The comparisons that began in childhood had become her everyday reality. Even when she excelled academically, her parents' focus remained on Caitlin. Even on Christmas morning, it was always Caitlin's presents that were opened first. "You're smart, so you'll be fine, but Caitlin needs special attention," her father would always say in that same detached tone. Even on the day Violet achieved top grades in her class, the conversation shifted to Caitlin's new volunteer work. On the day of her high school graduation, while her parents proudly talked about her sister's cheerleading accomplishments, Violet delivered the valedictorian speech. Each time, she had learned to smile silently, suppressing the emotions that surged inside her. Yet, despite it all, Violet had steadily forged her own path. She graduated at the top of her class from a prestigious university and built a career at a pharmaceutical company. Meeting Basil, an investment analyst, had opened her eyes to new possibilities in life. On her wedding day, in her parents' colonial-style house built in the 1980s, while she busied herself with preparations for the modest ceremony, her mother casually but certainly hurtfully remarked, "When Caitlin gets married, we'll have to do something grander, maybe at that lovely hotel near West Farms Mall." Basil had gently embraced her when those words pierced her heart. "Don't worry about it. Let's start our new life together," he had said, his touch and voice warm, offering the kind of comfort that stayed with her, even years later. 5 years had passed. Family interactions had dwindled to obligatory phone calls a few times a year and occasional emails. The Sunday brunch tradition had slowly faded. The emails from her parents were always filled with pride about her sister's accomplishments as a nurse at Memorial General Hospital. They would boast about Caitlin's success in her helping profession while downplaying Violet's promotions at the pharmaceutical company. Caitlin helped so many patients again today. She truly found her calling. Violet could only manage polite, formal replies to such emails. Instead, she buried herself in her work as the manager of Pharmco Incorporated's compliance department. Her judgment was consistently sharp and level-headed. Her ability to make decisions without emotional interference was something she had, ironically, learned from the strained dynamics of her family. The Starbucks latte on her desk was growing cold. The spring sunlight continued to bathe the room in warmth, yet Violet couldn't shake the cold feeling inside. Surrounded by the glass and steel of the modern office building, she turned away from the wedding photo and back to her computer screen. She took a sip of the now cooling latte. The bitterness that spread across her tongue seemed to mirror the undercurrent of emotions she couldn't avoid. Her Facebook timeline displayed as usual, posts from relatives and friends flowing by. During a brief break between client meetings, she scrolled absent-mindedly. Her finger paused as a post caught her eye. "A new life has been born at Memorial Hospital. Our angel, Emma." Violet's eyes froze as she read the name attached to the announcement, Caitlin Anderson, her sister's name. The photo showed her sister holding a baby in a hospital bed. Unlike her typically flashy personality, she wore an unusually gentle expression. Their parents stood on either side with beaming smiles, celebrating the birth of a new life. Her mother had tears in her eyes, and her father wore a proud expression. However, Violet's eyes were fixed on something captured at the edge of the photo. On the bedside table, there was a familiar wallet, a black leather luxury brand item, the one she had given her husband for Christmas. Next to it was the distinctive keychain Basil had bought during his Las Vegas business trip. It can't be. Violet's fingertips began to tremble. She checked the timestamp on the screen. The post was from 30 minutes ago. Basil was supposed to be on a business trip to Chicago. Cold sweat trickled down her spine. The office air conditioning suddenly seemed jarring, while gentle spring winds scattered cherry blossoms outside the window. Violet's core was frozen. Stay calm, whispering to herself. She took several deep breaths. Her experience in the compliance department was serving her well now. She must avoid emotional reactions. She needed to preserve evidence. She took out her smartphone and photographed the computer screen. She also saved screenshots, the post's date and time, comments, number of likes. She recorded everything. "Oh, Violet, how unusual to see you on Facebook at this hour." A voice suddenly came from behind. Turning around, she saw her colleague Iris standing there. She tried to peek at the screen. Violet hastily closed the browser. "Just taking a break. I'm heading out soon," Violet responded, consciously keeping her voice steady. Iris looked puzzled but said nothing more. "Congratulations. Wishing you happiness." Her fingers trembled slightly as they struck the keyboard while typing a comment on the post. Violet desperately suppressed her emotions. She pressed the send button. The posted message that appeared on screen felt somehow hollow. From her desk drawer, she took out a business card holder. Inside was a card for Blackstone Detective Agency, a reliable agency she had used for company investigations before. Violet picked up her smartphone and dialed the number. "Hello, Blackstone Detective Agency." "Hello. This is Violet Wilson from Farmco Incorporated. Miss Wilson, it's been a while. How can we help you today?" "I'd like to request a personal investigation." After hanging up, Violet began organizing her desk. She needed to cancel her afternoon meetings. She sent a brief email to her secretary, Sarah. "Leaving early due to illness. Please reschedule all afternoon appointments for tomorrow." As she picked up her handbag, Violet glanced out the window. The spring sunlight still shone brightly, illuminating the city below. But to her, the scene felt alien. Before leaving the office, she checked her smartphone one last time. The Facebook post had already gathered dozens of likes, with congratulatory messages continuously appearing in the comments section. The innocent joy from friends and family among them. "Violet, congratulations," felt cold, distant, and hollow. Stepping into the elevator, her eyes fell on her wedding ring, the symbol of the love and trust she and Basil had sworn 5 years ago. Now, its sparkle felt ironic, a painful reminder of everything that had come undone. When she reached the lobby on the first floor, the receptionist greeted her cheerfully. Violet returned a perfunctory smile before quickly leaving the building. In the early summer weather, the people walking through the high-rise district were absorbed in their daily routines. She hailed a taxi and gave the driver the detective agency's address. As the car began to move and the cityscape flowed past, Violet quietly steeled herself. This was the beginning of the end, but it would also be the starting point of a new life. The Blackstone Detective Agency was located on the 15th floor of an old office building downtown. She had visited several times for company investigations, but today felt entirely different. Stepping off the elevator, she noticed the dull brass plate at reception. A woman in her late 50s greeted her with a warm smile. "John Blackstone is waiting for you." The meeting room she was led to was furnished with heavy wooden furniture, and photographs chronicling the detective agency's long history adorned the walls. "Miss Wilson, it's been a while." Mr. Blackstone appeared in his usual navy suit. His graying hair and gentle expression gave him a fatherly air of reassurance, but his gaze was sharp, reflecting years of experience. "This is a personal request," Violet began, explaining the situation while showing him her smartphone screen, the Facebook post, the wallet and keychain captured in the photo, and her husband's fake business trip. As she spoke, she was surprised by how calm her voice sounded. "I see." Blackstone nodded thoughtfully. "Let's start with the basics: your husband's recent behavior patterns, credit card usage, phone records," he said, noting the necessary investigation items in his notebook. "Given our long-standing relationship of trust, we'll prioritize this investigation." True to his word, the investigation results began to arrive at a surprising speed. The first report was about Basil's supposed business trip to Chicago. While the company records showed a trip to Chicago, Basil's name didn't appear on any airline reservations. Instead, they found a booking at the Ritz-Carlton, a luxury hotel located near Memorial Hospital. "We've checked the security footage," the detective's report continued, along with photos of Basil and Caitlin secretly meeting in the hotel lobby. Caitlin was wearing a flashy red dress, while Basil appeared in his usual well-groomed suit. The two were speaking intimately, their expressions betraying no hint of guilt. The credit card usage history painted an equally telling picture: luxury restaurants, brand shops, and, most shockingly, continuous purchases from high-end baby stores over the past 6 months. It was clear now everything had been planned. "We've completed the analysis of phone records." Blackstone flipped through the new report. The findings were startling. While Violet worked late nights, frequent calls had been exchanged between Basil and her sister. Over the past year, the number of calls exceeded 500. "We've also obtained Memorial Hospital records," Blackstone added, pulling out another file. Pregnancy was confirmed 9 months ago, according to the attending physician's records. She had regular checkups from early pregnancy, and the due date, he hesitated for a moment, coincides with when Basil first started his business trips. The evidence kept piling up: records of purchasing a luxury brand stroller, rumors of visits to an upscale hot spring together, and, most decisively, hospital security camera footage capturing Basil repeatedly accompanying her to prenatal checkups. Everything was perfectly documented. "With this much evidence, you'll have sufficient advantage in divorce mediation." Violet quietly nodded at Blackstone's words. "As the next step, let me introduce you to a reliable lawyer." Just then, Violet's smartphone vibrated. A new Facebook notification. More likes on her sister's post, passionate comments from their parents, congratulatory messages from friends among them. Violet, a congratulations, glowed cold as ice. "Ms. Wilson, while tidying up the documents," Blackstone spoke quietly, "in my experience, many clients become emotional when faced with such situations, but your composure is remarkable." Violet gave a bitter smile. "It's what I learned in the compliance department. Don't get swept up in emotions, gather evidence, follow proper procedures, that's all. Still, no matter how calm you are, this is family betrayal. If you need anything, please contact us anytime, whatever we can do." "Thank you." Violet stood up and looked out the window. Twilight was approaching, casting a soft light over the city. "But I'll be fine. This isn't an ending, it's a new beginning." Before leaving the meeting room, she turned back to Blackstone one last time. "One more request. Could you investigate my parents as well? I think there's a high possibility they knew about this situation." Blackstone nodded silently. His expression showed his readiness for the new investigation ahead. Outside, the twilight city was bustling with people heading home. Violet took a deep breath. The air already carried hints of night, but her heart felt surprisingly clear. She took out her smartphone to schedule an appointment with the lawyer. The evidence was sufficient. Now it was time to prepare legally and then wait for the moment to reveal the truth. As she got into a taxi, Violet's eyes fell on her wedding ring that had become unnecessary. Her parents' house maintained the same appearance it had for over 30 years. The well-maintained lawn, her mother's cherished rose garden, and the old brass door knocker at the entrance. Everything was familiar yet felt alien today. Violet took a deep breath in the car. The final report from the Blackstone Detective Agency was in her bag. All the truth, including the investigation results of her parents, was contained within. "Are you ready?" Sarah Cohen, the lawyer in the passenger seat, spoke quietly. In her late 40s, she was highly regarded as a divorce specialist. "Remember, you have many people on your side." When she rang the doorbell, her mother came out. "Oh, Violet, how unusual." There was a slight tension in her voice. Everyone was already gathered in the living room. Her father sat in his usual spot on the sofa, looking up from his newspaper. Her sister, Caitlin, wore a flashy post-pregnancy dress holding the baby, and Basil stood by the window. "Thank you all for gathering here today." Violet's voice was surprisingly steady. The sound of Cohen opening her briefcase echoed in the heavy atmosphere. "What kind of gathering is this?" her mother asked anxiously. "It's a place to discuss the truth," Violet answered calmly. "First, please look at these." The evidence spread out on the table. Photos of secret hotel meetings, credit card usage history, hospital records, and numerous messages exchanged between her parents and Caitlin. "This?" Her father's face turned pale. "Wait, let me explain." Basil stepped forward. At first, it was just sympathy. She seemed lonely. "Lonely?" Violet's voice trembled slightly. "Or were you just bored with our marriage?" "That's not it. Before I knew it, I was in too deep." Basil continued. "I really love you. Can't we forget everything and start over?" "Start over?" Violet laughed softly. "You can say that after seeing this evidence?" Caitlin suddenly stood up. After handing the baby to their mother, she wore a challenging expression. "Yes, I did it. I wanted to ruin Big Sister's perfect life. Always, always being compared. Big Sister is smart, Big Sister is excellent, Big Sister is—" "Caitlin," her mother tried to stop her. "No, Mom," Caitlin continued. "Big Sister ruined my life. Parents' expectations, everyone's evaluation, everything. So I wanted to do the same to her." "Be quiet," her father shouted, but there was something weak in his voice. "And you, Dad," Violet calmly retorted, "why did you turn a blind eye? According to the detective's report, you must have known about their relationship." Silence dominated the room. Her mother began crying. Then, Cohen cleared her throat quietly. "Mrs. Anderson," the lawyer addressed her mother gently, "could you tell us about your past?" The color drained from her mother's face. "How we've investigated everything," Violet said. "Your teenage pregnancy, hasty marriage, and—" "Stop!" her mother screamed. But it couldn't be stopped now. "Is that why you were so obsessed with Caitlin's happy marriage?" Violet questioned. "Is that also why you said, 'We'll do something grander for Caitlin at my wedding'?" "I didn't want her to struggle like we did," her mother's voice trembled. "Appearances matter." "And what about my life?" Violet's voice showed emotion for the first time. "What about my happiness?" Her father stood up. "Violet, Dad was influenced by Mom and overprotected Caitlin," Violet interrupted. "My independence was misunderstood as cold, and we grew apart, and you turned a blind eye to your daughter's affair, all for the sake of family appearances." No one could argue. The evidence was too clear. "Now, let me tell you the schedule going forward." Violet regained her composure. Cohen pulled out documents. First, the divorce mediation schedule. Then Violet continued. "I'll report to Basil's company and Memorial Hospital by tomorrow the investigation results about their inappropriate relationship." "Wait," Caitlin cried out. "My job." "You should have thought about that," Violet said coldly. "Actions have consequences. Social media announcement," Cohen confirmed, "as planned." "Violet, please," Basil pleaded. "I'll demand substantial compensation from you," Violet said, ignoring her husband, "and money to sell the parents' house and relocate." "The house!" her father exclaimed in surprise. Yes, your credibility in this area will be lost. The baby started crying. Her mother just silently rocked the baby. The once perfect family portrait was now crumbling before their eyes. Let's end this. Violet stood up. Cohen quietly packed the documents into her bag. Violet, her mother called out one last time. Are you really? I'm going to be happy, Violet turned and said. This time, in the true sense. Leaving the living room heavy with tension, she didn't look back. Her new life had already begun. 1 year later, in spring, Violet stood at the top floor of a glass high-rise, gazing down at the city from her new office. 3 months had passed since her promotion to Director of Compliance at Farmco Incorporated. Her spacious corner office still carried the faint scent of new furniture, a quiet reminder of how much had changed. On her desk, a Business Week article covered an entire page. The headline read, Female Leader Building a New Era in the Pharmaceutical Industry, accompanied by Violet's photo. The interview praised her innovative compliance program, highlighting her impact in the industry. Mrs. Wilson, preparations for the next meeting are complete, Jessica, her new secretary, announced, knocking softly before adding that Sarah, her former secretary, had been promoted to manager in another department, a position Violet had recommended. Thank you, just 5 more minutes, Violet replied, her voice steady as she glanced out the window. The sky had cleared after a spring storm, and the new green leaves on the street trees sparkled in the sunlight. Violet's smartphone buzzed, breaking her reverie. It was a notification from a local news site. Former Goldman and Partners analyst denied new position on West Coast. Though Basil's name wasn't directly mentioned, Violet knew exactly who the article referred to. After the divorce, Basil had been forced to resign from his company, and his life had spiraled downward. His high alimony payments and ruined reputation had left him working at a small securities firm in a provincial city, earning less than 1/3 of his former salary. Another tab showed a headline about Memorial Hospital. Nursing license suspension appeal rejected due to inappropriate relationship. Caitlin's life had taken a dramatic turn as well. After being fired from the hospital and losing her nursing career, she had moved back in with their parents. Life as a single mother had proved much harder than she'd anticipated. Eventually, their parents sold their longtime home and moved to another state. The loss of their social standing had been more severe than they had expected. For a couple who had taken such pride in their teaching careers, it must have been an unbearable reality. Violet sighed softly. In the end, trying to maintain appearances cost them everything, she whispered, but there was no trace of regret in her voice. From her desk drawer, Violet pulled out a photograph, the wedding picture from 5 years ago. What had once squeezed her heart now seemed like a distant memory. She placed the photo into the shredder, watching as it was quietly destroyed. Her new life, more fulfilling than she could have ever imagined, was moving forward. On weekends, she had started attending a yoga class she'd always been interested in. Sunday brunch with friends she had met there had become a new pleasure. Even dinner alone, with ingredients carefully selected from Whole Foods, felt like a special luxury she had come to appreciate. Ms. Wilson, it's time. Jessica's voice broke into her thoughts. Violet stood up, ready for the day's board meeting, where she would present the new compliance system she had developed. As she stepped into the hallway, young employees bowed respectfully, their admiration evident. Her previous reputation for being cold had transformed into one of dignity and respect. On her way to the conference room, her smartphone buzzed again. This time, it was a notification from an online dating app, confirming dinner plans with someone she had matched with the previous week. He was a university professor, and their intellectual conversations had flowed naturally from their first message. Still taking it slow, she reminded herself, though she couldn't deny the excitement of new possibilities. Before opening the conference room door, Violet checked her appearance. Her navy-tailored suit was perfectly complemented by a subtle yet striking pearl necklace. Her makeup was understated, yet flawless, and her expression radiated confidence. "Good morning," she greeted as she entered the conference room, her voice dignified and strong. Outside, the spring sunlight bathed the room in a warm glow, signaling the arrival of a new season. Looking at her reflection in the glass table, Violet smiled slightly, not a smile of complete victory or satisfaction from revenge, but a quiet, confident expression of pride from a woman who had reclaimed her life. "Shall we begin?" Violet's voice echoed in the bright conference room. This wasn't an ending, it was just the beginning of a new story. Betrayal cuts the deepest when it comes from those meant to love you the most. But once the truth is exposed, what comes next? Justice? Revenge? Or something even more powerful, reclaiming her life on her own terms? Violet's story is not just about betrayal, it's about resilience, reinvention, and self-worth. She was deceived by the very people who should have supported her, but she didn't let that break her. Instead of falling into despair, she meticulously gathered the truth, confronted the people who wronged her, and ensured they faced the consequences. But her greatest victory wasn't just revenge, it was taking control of her own life and future. Her journey is a reminder that self-respect comes at a cost, but it's always worth it. Too often, women are expected to endure betrayal for the sake of family, to remain silent, to keep the peace. But Violet's story challenges that expectation. She didn't just survive, she thrived. She proved that true strength isn't about staying quiet in the face of injustice, but about standing up, demanding accountability, and walking away from those who don't deserve a place in your life. What do you think? Should Violet have exposed her husband, sister, and parents so publicly? Or would a quieter approach have been better? Should family loyalty remain intact no matter the betrayal? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more gripping tales of justice, drama, and redemption.
I never thought my world would shatter during a beginner's ballet class. But that's exactly what happened on a Tuesday afternoon in March, while I was teaching 6-year-olds how to plie. My name is Harper, and until that moment, I was living what I thought was my best life. The dance studio my adoptive parents helped me build was thriving, despite the lingering effects of the pandemic. I had 20 little dancers in tutus following my movements in the mirror, their faces scrunched in concentration. "Beautiful form, Lily," I said, smiling at a particularly focused student in the front row. "Remember everyone, shoulders back, chin up." My phone buzzed in my pocket. Usually, I never answer calls during class, but something made me check the screen. The hospital's name flashed across it, making my stomach drop. I'd been dreading this call for weeks. "Miss Chen," I called to my assistant. "Could you take over for a moment?" My hands were shaking as I stepped into the hallway. The doctor's voice was gentle but clinical. "Mrs. Caldwell, I'm sorry to inform you." The rest of his words blurred together. "Both my parents. Gone within hours of each other. COVID. Complications. Arrangements needed to be made." I pressed my back against the cool wall, sliding down until I hit the floor. Through the studio's open door, I could hear Miss Chen leading the class through their routine. The same routine I'd been teaching for years, the one my mom used to watch from that worn chair in the corner, beaming with pride. "Harper? Are you okay?" I looked up to see Mr. Jameson, the retired dancer who owned the building. He must have seen me from his apartment next door. The concern in his eyes broke something inside me. "They're gone," I whispered. "Both of them." He didn't say anything, just sat down beside me on the floor, his joints creaking in protest. We sat there in silence while tiny feet thumped against the hardwood floor behind us, and somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. My phone buzzed again. "Ethan, my husband of 8 months. Babe? You're not going to believe this. I just got that promotion." I opened my mouth to tell him about my parents, but he kept talking. "We should celebrate. Mom's coming over for dinner." I told her the good news, and she insisted on cooking for us. "You'll be home by 6, right?" "Ethan, my voice cracked. My parents just died. The silence on the other end stretched for what felt like forever. Finally, he said, "Oh. Well, maybe we should cancel dinner then." Something cold settled in my chest. "Yeah, maybe we should. I'll tell Mom. She'll understand." He paused. "Do you need anything?" I needed him to come get me. To hold me while I fell apart. To tell me everything would somehow be okay. Instead, I said, "No, I'm fine. I should finish up here." After we hung up, Mr. Jameson patted my shoulder. Sometimes the people we expect to catch us are the ones who let us fall. I wanted to ask him what he meant, but Miss Chen poked her head out. "Harper? Lily's mom is here early, and she's asking about the upcoming recital." Taking a deep breath, I stood up and straightened my leotard. The world was still spinning, even if mine had stopped. There were classes to teach, students to nurture, and a legacy to uphold. "Coming," I said, wiping my eyes. As I turned to thank Mr. Jameson, he was already shuffling back to his apartment, leaving me with an odd feeling that his words held more weight than I realized. Little did I know then that my parents' death would set off a chain of events that would force me to choose between the life I thought I wanted and the one I was meant to live. The inheritance check sat on my kitchen counter for 3 days before I could bring myself to look at it. My parents had always been careful with money, but I never expected them to leave me enough to potentially transform the studio. All I had to do was sign it. "I don't understand why you're rushing into this," Ethan said, leaning against the counter one morning. "The studio's doing fine as it is." I picked up the check, running my finger along the edge. "It's not about doing fine. It's about growing, expanding. We could offer scholarships, maybe even." "Scholarships?" Lorraine's voice made me jump. I hadn't heard her come in. She did that a lot lately, using the spare key Ethan had given her without telling me. "Darling, you're so young to be taking on such responsibility. Wouldn't it be wiser to save that money for other things?" The way she glanced at my stomach made her meaning clear. I gripped the check tighter. "Mom's right," Ethan said, accepting the coffee she handed him. "We've talked about starting a family." "No, you've talked about it," I muttered, but neither of them seemed to hear me. My phone buzzed with a text from Chloe, "Studio emergency. Pipe burst in the bathroom. Get here ASAP." "I have to go," I said, grabbing my keys. "Water issue at the studio." Lorraine clicked her tongue. "Another problem with that old building? Perhaps this is a sign, dear. Sometimes we need to let go of childhood dreams to embrace adult responsibilities." I was halfway out the door when Ethan called after me. "Don't forget dinner tonight. Mom's making her special pot roast." The studio was chaos when I arrived. Water pooled beneath the bathroom door, and Mr. Jameson was already there with a wrench, directing a plumber he'd called. "Your friend Chloe's handling the morning classes," he said, nodding toward the main room where I could hear music playing. "Quite a coincidence, this pipe bursting right after you mentioned expanding." "What do you mean?" He shrugged. "Buildings have a way of testing us when we're on the verge of something big. Like they want to make sure we're committed." The plumber emerged, wiping his hands. "Simple fix, but there's more damage than there should be. Looks like someone loosened the connection deliberately." My blood ran cold. "That's impossible." "Who would?" "Harper." Lorraine appeared in the doorway, perfectly coiffed despite the early hour. "I thought you might need help, so I brought some cleaning supplies." She held up a bag from the hardware store, smiling that smile that never quite reached her eyes. "How thoughtful," Mr. Jameson said, watching her carefully. "And how did you know about the water damage?" "Oh, She faltered for a moment. "I just assumed, given the age of the building." I spent the rest of the morning mopping up water and rescheduling classes, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling in my stomach. When I finally checked my phone, I had 3 missed calls from Ethan and a text, Mom's upset you didn't thank her for trying to help. Would it kill you to show some gratitude? Chloe found me in the office, staring at the inheritance check. You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. I think. I hesitated, the words feeling ridiculous even as I said them. I think my mother-in-law might have sabotaged the bathroom. Honestly? Nothing would surprise me after the way she acted at your parents' memorial. Chloe perched on the desk. Remember how she kept telling everyone about your unfortunate adoption situation and how lucky you were that Ethan married you anyway? I did remember, but I'd been too grief-stricken to process it at the time. Now, looking back, I saw a pattern forming. The accidental deletion of my class schedule from the computer. The mysterious negative reviews online that disappeared before I could show them to Ethan. I need to deposit this check, I said suddenly, standing up. Today. Good, Chloe smiled. Because I already called the contractor about those renovation plans we discussed. As I left the office, I caught a glimpse of Lorraine through the studio window, phone in hand, watching me. She waved, all sweetness and light, but I finally saw what Mr. Jameson had been trying to tell me. Sometimes the most dangerous smiles hide the sharpest teeth. I never meant to overhear Ethan talking to his friends at the bar. I'd stopped by to surprise him after class, still riding high from securing the contractor for the studio renovations. But his voice, slightly slurred from happy hour, made me freeze just outside the door. Yeah, she's still playing pretend with her little dance studio, he was saying. It's cute, really. Keeps her busy while I handle the real work. Laughter rippled through his group. I pressed myself against the wall, my heart hammering. At least she inherited some cash, someone said. That's gotta help with the bills. Please. Ethan's scoff felt like a slap. My wife thinks she's going to turn that dump into some kind of performing arts center. Like she's qualified for that. She can barely manage her checking account without me. My phone buzzed. Lorraine, of course. Darling, have you seen the comments on your studio's social media? So concerning. Perhaps we should discuss your online presence over tea? I clicked away from her message to find what she meant. The studio's latest posts were flooded with new comments, questions about my qualifications, concerns about safety protocols, vague hints about inappropriate behavior during private lessons. My hands shook as I scrolled. Harper? I looked up to find Mr. Jameson watching me from his doorway. The walls are thin, he said quietly. I heard you pacing out here. My voice cracked. I don't understand why they're doing this. Some people can't stand to see others fly, he said, especially when they've spent their lives crawling. Inside the bar, Ethan was still talking. Mom's right, it's time Harper grew up. Once she's pregnant, she'll forget about all this dance nonsense. I pushed away from the wall, my decision instant and crystal clear. Instead of confronting Ethan, I headed straight to the studio. The renovation plans were spread across my desk, next to a framed photo of my parents at my first recital. I thought I'd find you here. Chloe appeared in the doorway, holding 2 coffee cups. Lily's mom told me about the online comments. We need to talk. They're trying to stop me, I said, gesturing at the renovation plans. Ethan, Lorraine, they want me to fail. Then don't. She set the coffee down and pulled up a chair. Your parents didn't adopt a quitter. No, I smiled slightly, they adopted a fighter. My phone buzzed again. Ethan, where are you? Mom's worried. She says you're not answering her messages about the social media situation. Before I could respond, another text appeared. By the way, I handled that contractor problem. Told him we're going in a different direction. We can discuss it when you get home. The room seemed to tilt. He canceled the contractor, I whispered. How did he even know? Because Lorraine was watching when I showed you the plans yesterday, Chloe said. I saw her on her phone immediately after. A notification popped up. Someone had tagged the studio in a post. It was a photo of me talking to Mr. Jameson in the hallway, clearly taken without our knowledge. The caption read, "Should parents be concerned about the private meetings happening at this dance studio?" Lily's face flashed in my mind, along with all my other students who trusted me, who found joy and confidence in my classes. This wasn't just about me anymore. "I need your help," I told Chloe, pulling out a fresh piece of paper. "We're going to need evidence of everything, the sabotage, the lies, the photos. All of it." "What are you going to do?" I thought about Ethan's dismissive laughter, Lorraine's subtle threats, and the legacy my parents left me. "I'm going to teach them all what happens when you try to clip a dancer's wings." Mr. Jameson appeared in the doorway, holding a small security camera. "I installed this after the pipe incident," he said. "Thought you might need it someday." As I took the camera, his earlier words echoed in my mind, "Some people can't stand to see others fly." Well, they were about to learn that I wasn't just flying, I was soaring, and their attempts to bring me down would only push me higher. The security footage revealed more than I bargained for. I watched the screen in Mr. Jameson's apartment, my hands gripping the armrests as Lorraine appeared in frame after frame, tampering with the studio's mail, photographing private student information, even attempting to access the computer when she thought no one was around. "There's your proof," Mr. Jameson said quietly. "Question is, what are you going to do with it?" Before I could answer, the room started spinning. The lack of sleep, constant stress, and skipped meals suddenly caught up with me. I tried to stand, but my legs wouldn't cooperate. "Harper." Everything went black. I came to on a hospital bed, the fluorescent lights harsh against my eyes. Chloe sat beside me, her expression worried. "You fainted during intermediate class," she said. "The doctor says it's exhaustion and dehydration." "The students are fine. Mr. Jameson is handling everything." She hesitated. "But Ethan?" "What about Ethan?" "He's in the waiting room with Lorraine. They're talking about using this as proof you're not fit to run the studio." My heart monitor beeped faster. "They can't do that. They're saying it's for your own good." Chloe leaned closer. "Harper, I found something while covering your advanced class today. One of the parents mentioned Lorraine approached them about buying the studio building. Apparently, she's been telling people you're planning to close down." The pieces clicked into place, the sabotage, the rumors, the constant undermining. They weren't just trying to discourage me, they were trying to force me out completely. A nurse appeared with discharge papers. "Your husband's asking to see you," she said. "Should I send him in?" I caught Chloe's eye. "No," I said. "I need a minute." As soon as the nurse left, I swung my legs over the bed's edge. "Help me up. We need to get to the studio before they do." "You should rest." "I'll rest when my parents' legacy is safe." I grabbed my clothes from the chair. "There's something in the office safe they can't find." We managed to slip out through a side entrance, but my legs were still shaky. As Chloe drove, I called Mr. Jameson. "Don't let anyone in the office," I said. "Especially not Lorraine or Ethan." "Too late," he replied. "They're already here with some real estate agent." But don't worry, I accidentally spilled coffee all over the keypad. Can't seem to remember the combination. I could hear Lorraine's voice in the background, "This is ridiculous. As her family, we have every right." "Family?" Mr. Jameson's voice turned sharp. "Family doesn't sabotage someone's dreams." When we arrived, Ethan was pacing outside my office. "Harper. What are you doing here? You should be resting. Mom and I have everything under control." "I bet you do." I moved past him toward the office, where Lorraine stood with a man in an expensive suit. "Darling, you're being hysterical," Lorraine said. "We're only thinking of your health. Running this studio is clearly too much for you." I reached for the safe, my fingers steady despite my pounding heart. You want to see what's in here so badly? Fine. The safe clicked open. Inside lay a single envelope, my parents' final letter to me, along with documentation of every investment they'd made in the studio. But more importantly, there was a USB drive containing backup footage from the old security system they'd installed years ago. My parents knew something you don't, Lorraine. I held up the drive. They knew that real family protects each other. They protected me by documenting everything, including your first attempts to interfere with the studio 3 months before they died. The color drained from her face. Behind me, I heard Ethan's sharp intake of breath. So, I said, turning to face them both, should we discuss who's really unfit to be making decisions around here? The room fell silent except for the distant sound of dance music from the main studio, where life went on. Unaware of the war being waged in this small office. I might have fainted earlier, but standing here now, I'd never felt stronger. Sometimes you have to fall before you can rise. And I was done falling. The USB drive sat on my lawyer's desk like a loaded gun. After reviewing the footage, she'd gone quiet, shuffling through papers while I waited. This is compelling evidence of harassment and attempted fraud, she finally said. But filing charges would mean going public, I finished. I know. My phone buzzed. Ethan, again, come home. We can work this out. Mom's sorry about everything. I switched off the phone and turned back to the lawyer. What happens to the studio if I file? Before she could answer, someone knocked. Through the frosted glass, I recognized Lily's mother's silhouette. My stomach dropped, she wasn't supposed to be here. Harper? She pushed the door open, eyes red. We need to talk about what's happening at the studio. The lawyer gathered her papers. I'll give you a moment. Once we were alone, Lily's mom pulled out her phone. These messages. They're from your mother-in-law. She showed me a series of texts suggesting I'd been mishandling studio funds, endangering children. Even hinting at criminal behavior. Other parents got them too. Some are pulling their kids out. My hands started shaking. When did this start? Last night. After you left the hospital. She hesitated. Lily's devastated. She doesn't understand why she can't dance with you anymore. I thought of Lily's face during yesterday's class, right before I fainted, how she'd finally mastered that difficult turn sequence. Beaming with pride. Now Lorraine was trying to take that joy away from her too. I need to get to the studio, I said, standing up. Mrs. Miller said you're not well enough. Mrs. Miller needs to stop speaking for me. The studio was eerily quiet when I arrived. A note on the door announced classes were temporarily suspended due to management issues. Inside, Ethan stood in my office, going through the safe. Looking for something? I asked. He jumped, then tried to cover his surprise with anger. Where have you been? Mom's beside herself. The things you accused her of are all true. I moved to my desk, blocking his access to the safe. And now she's texting parents, trying to destroy everything I've built. She's protecting our family. He slammed his hand on the desk. This studio is tearing us apart. Can't you see that? No, your mother is tearing us apart. And you're letting her. Because she's right. His voice cracked. You care more about this place than our marriage. Than having children. Than everything we planned. We didn't plan anything, Ethan. You and your mother planned it all. The door creaked. Mr. Jameson stood there with Chloe, both looking concerned. Behind them, I glimpsed Lorraine in the hallway, phone in hand. Everything okay in here? Mr. Jameson asked. Fine, Ethan snapped. This is between me and my wife. Not anymore. I pulled out my phone, displaying the group chat where parents were sharing Lorraine's messages. You made it public when you started destroying children's dreams to control me. Lorraine rushed in. I was protecting those children. From you. An unstable woman playing at being a teacher? I have video of you tampering with the studio, I cut in. Of you stealing information. Planning sabotage. My lawyer has copies. The color drained from her face. Ethan stepped between us. You're bluffing. Try me. I turned to Chloe. Show them. She projected the security footage onto the mirror-lined wall. We all watched in silence as Lorraine's schemes played out in stark black and white. I want a divorce, I said quietly. Ethan's laugh was hollow. You'd throw away everything for this dump? No. I looked at my reflection in the mirror, surrounded by the space where I'd always felt most alive. I'm throwing away nothing to save everything. As if on cue, music drifted in from the main studio. Through the window, I saw Lily, practicing her turns alone, refusing to give up her dance dreams. Sometimes the hardest pirouette is the one that spins you away from what's familiar toward what's right. I'd rather dance alone than be trapped in someone else's choreography. The locksmith was changing the studio's locks when Ethan's lawyer called. I let it go to voicemail, focusing instead on the growing crowd of parents and students gathering outside. They'd seen Lorraine's social media posts about the studio's immediate closure. You don't have to be here for this, Chloe said, watching me watch them. Yes, I do. The locksmith finished just as Ethan's car pulled up. He stormed toward the entrance, Lorraine close behind, waving papers. This is harassment, she shouted at the confused locksmith. We're her family. Not anymore, I said through the glass door. And this is private property. Ethan's face darkened. Private property? I helped pay for this place. Actually, Mr. Jameson appeared beside me, you didn't. I've got copies of every financial transaction since this studio opened. Would you like to see them? Lorraine pulled out her phone. Fine. We'll do this the hard way. She started typing furiously. Within minutes, my phone exploded with notifications. She'd posted photos of me leaving my lawyer's office, twisted to suggest I was embezzling studio funds. Another post hinted at inappropriate relationships with students' parents. Harper? Lily's small voice made me turn. She stood in the studio hallway, clutching her dance bag. Mom says we have to leave. Lily, wait, but her mother was already hurrying her toward the exit, avoiding my eyes. One by one, parents collected their children. Some looked apologetic, others angry or confused. Years of trust, evaporating in minutes. You're ruining lives, Ethan said through the door. Just sign the studio over to Mom. We can still fix our marriage. Fix what? I pressed my hand against the glass. The parts where you let her destroy everything I love? Or the parts where you helped? I tried to protect you from yourself. His fist hit the door, making me jump. You're throwing away everything for nothing. No, I whispered, but my voice shook. I'm saving myself. He laughed coldly. Saving yourself? Look around, Harper. You've got no family, no students, no future here. What exactly are you saving? The crowd had grown, phones recording everything. Tomorrow, there would be more posts, more rumors, more damage. I felt the familiar dizziness returning. Harper. Mr. Jameson touched my arm. Your parents left you a letter. The one in the safe. Maybe it's time to read it. My hands trembled as I opened the envelope, unfolding the paper inside. My mother's handwriting blurred through my tears. Dearest Harper. We knew this day might come, when someone would try to clip your wings. Remember what we taught you, a dancer doesn't just perform steps, she tells a story. Make sure yours is true to who you are, not who others want you to be. Love, Mom and Dad. Outside, Lorraine was still recording, narrating for her followers. See how she hides behind locked doors? What kind of teacher abandons her students? The kind who's about to stop dancing to someone else's tune. I grabbed my phone and started my own live stream. To all my students and their families, you deserve the truth. I held up the security footage playing on the wall, Lorraine tampering with equipment, staging photos, creating false evidence. This studio isn't closing, I continued. But it is changing. Starting today, we're offering full scholarships to any student affected by recent events. Because dance isn't about control or manipulation. It's about freedom. Ethan's face contorted. You can't afford that. Watch me. The first parent to step away from Lorraine's group was Lily's mom. She looked at her phone, then at me, then at her daughter's hopeful face. Finally, she nodded. Others followed, forming a line at the door. Not everyone, some damage couldn't be undone. But enough to matter. Enough to fight for. This isn't over, Lorraine hissed as security finally arrived to clear the scene. You're right, I said, watching Lily demonstrate her turn sequence to another student through the window. It's just beginning. Sometimes hitting bottom shows you exactly how high you can rise. And I was done letting anyone else choreograph my ascent. The email arrived at midnight. A single line from Ethan: Mom's calling a press conference tomorrow about the studio's financial irregularities. I forwarded it to my lawyer and opened the safe one last time. Behind my parents' letter lay another envelope, one I'd hoped never to use. Are you sure about this? Chloe asked when I called. Once you do this. They're not giving me a choice. I looked at the security camera feed showing Lorraine already setting up outside the studio. Local news vans arriving. Get everyone here. It's time. By morning, a crowd had gathered. Lorraine stood at a makeshift podium, Ethan beside her, both dressed like they were attending a victory party. As a concerned citizen, Lorraine began, I can no longer stay silent about the disturbing activities at this dance studio. I pushed through the crowd, Mr. Jameson and Chloe flanking me. Lily's mom was there too, phone recording everything. Harper, Ethan hissed, grabbing my arm. Don't do anything stupid. I pulled away. Too late. I learned from the best. Lorraine's voice rose. I have evidence of misappropriated funds, endangerment of minors. Actually, I cut in, loud enough to make the reporters turn. I have something better. I nodded to Chloe, who connected her laptop to the portable projector we'd set up. The studio's wall became a screen. 3 years ago, I said, my parents installed cameras everywhere, including in their home office, where they met with potential investors. Lorraine's face went white as the video began playing. There she was, in my parents' office, rifling through their files after hours. Another clip showed her threatening a building inspector, then doctoring permit documents. Turn that off. Ethan lunged for the projector, but Mr. Jameson blocked him. There's more, I continued. Every conversation where you planned to force them out. Every bribe. Every threat. They documented everything. You're lying, Lorraine sputtered. This is obviously fake. The timestamps and metadata are verified, my lawyer called from the crowd. As are the banking records showing Mrs. Miller's attempts to fraudulently acquire this property. Reporters' cameras swiveled from me to Lorraine. She grabbed her phone, presumably to delete evidence, but froze when she saw her screen. Looking for your social media accounts? I asked. They've been suspended. Turns out platforms take evidence of coordinated harassment pretty seriously. You vindictive little, she stepped toward me, mask finally slipping. You think you've won? I'll destroy you. You'll what? I held up my phone, recording. Keep threatening me on camera? Ethan moved between us. Harper, please. We can work this out privately. As a family. Family? I laughed, the sound sharp enough to make him flinch. Was it family when you helped her hack my accounts? When you told the bank I was mentally unfit to manage my inheritance? His eyes widened. How did you? Your mother's not the only one who knows how to gather evidence. I turned to the cameras. I'm not pressing charges. I don't want revenge. I just want the truth known. The truth? Lorraine scoffed. The truth is you're nothing without us. Just an orphan playing pretend? Mom, stop. Ethan's voice cracked. He was staring at the wall, where the video now showed him and his mother planning their takeover of the studio. Laughing about how easy it would be to break me. Reporters shouted questions. Phones flashed. But I watched Lily, standing with her mother at the edge of the crowd. Performing a perfect pirouette, the one she'd mastered the day everything fell apart. The studio reopens tomorrow, I announced. With new scholarship programs for students affected by recent events. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying what others love, it's creating something they can't touch. As security escorted Lorraine and Ethan away, Mr. Jameson touched my shoulder. Your parents would be proud. I know. I watched Lily teaching another student her pirouette, their reflections strong and clear in the studio windows. They taught me the most important step in any dance, knowing when to break free from a partner who's trying to make you fall. The truth, like the perfect turn, isn't about force. It's about finding your center and holding it, no matter who tries to throw you off balance. 6 months after the press conference, I found myself sorting through the last box of my belongings from Ethan's house. Most of it was dance memorabilia, old programs, photos, costume sketches. At the bottom lay a crumpled newspaper article about Lorraine's arrest for financial fraud. She'd tried to pull the same scheme with another business, but this time without her son to protect her. The studio door chimed. Miss Harper. Lily burst in, clutching an envelope. I got in. The summer intensive. I hugged her, remembering my own acceptance letter all those years ago. First scholarship student to make it, I said. Your mom must be proud. She is. Lily's mom appeared in the doorway. Though not as proud as your parents would be of you. The renovated studio hummed with activity around us. Through the new floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see Chloe teaching in the expanded practice room. Mr. Jameson sat in his usual spot, offering gentle corrections to passing students. My phone buzzed Ethan's number. I'd been expecting this call since the divorce was finalized last week. For a moment, I considered letting it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. I'm selling Mom's house, he said without preamble. The court fees took everything else. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it. Are you? His laugh was hollow. We could have had everything. No, we couldn't. We never wanted the same everything. After he hung up, I watched my advanced class warming up. Among them was a teenage girl who'd transferred from across town, daughter of the business owner Lorraine had tried to defraud. Sometimes karma dances in perfect time. Mail came, Chloe announced, dropping a thick envelope on my desk. From that performing arts foundation you applied to. My hands shook as I opened it. The studio had been thriving since reopening, but this grant could fund scholarships for years to come. Well? Mr. Jameson appeared, leaning on his cane. We got it. My voice cracked. Full funding for the outreach program. Of course you did. He smiled. You know what your mother told me once? She said you were born dancing to your own rhythm. Took them years to realize they shouldn't teach you steps, they should just give you space to create your own. I blinked back tears, remembering Mom's letter. Make sure yours is true to who you are. The afternoon sun streamed through the windows, catching the new sign above the mirror. Caldwell Dance Academy, where every story finds its movement. Below it, students of all ages moved in sync. their reflections creating patterns of light and shadow. "Miss Harper?" Lily tugged my sleeve. "Can you help me with something?" She led me to the practice room and took position. "I've been working on a new combination. It's about when bad things happen but you get stronger." As she began to dance, I recognized pieces of my own story in her movements, the struggle, the fall, the rise. She'd been watching, learning, transforming pain into art just as I had. "Beautiful," I said when she finished. "But try this." I demonstrated a modification to her final turn, adding a moment of suspension before the landing. Sometimes the pause is as important as the movement. Later, locking up for the night, I found one last item in the box from Ethan's, a photo of us on our wedding day. We looked happy, unaware of the cracks forming beneath our feet. I pinned it to the office bulletin board alongside newspaper clippings about the studio's revival and photos of smiling students. Some might call it dwelling on the past, but dancers know better. Every step, even the missteps, becomes part of the choreography that leads us home. Mr. Jameson's words from that first terrible day echoed in my mind. Sometimes the people we expect to catch us are the ones who let us fall. What he hadn't said was the rest. Sometimes falling teaches us we had wings all along. I turned off the lights, letting the moonlight paint shadows across the dance floor. Tomorrow would bring new students, new challenges, new chances to rise. But tonight, in the quiet, I simply stood in my truth and let it dance through me.
I never thought my life would change so dramatically at a party I didn't even want to attend. Looking back now, I can pinpoint that exact moment when everything shifted. When I first locked eyes with him across Jenna's crowded living room. My name is Morgan, and 6 months ago, I moved to Seattle for a fresh start after a messy breakup. Starting over at 32 wasn't exactly in my life plan, but neither was catching my ex-fiancé with his secretary. Classic, right? You can't hide in your apartment forever, Jenna had insisted earlier that evening, practically dragging me to her housewarming party. The dental office will survive one night without their best hygienist. I was nursing my second glass of wine in the corner, watching people mingle, when Jenna materialized beside me. "See that guy by the window? That's Ethan Stone. He's single, successful, and definitely your type." "I'm not looking for." I started to protest, but then he turned around. Tall, with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. He caught me staring and raised his glass slightly. "Too late," Jenna whispered, already waving him over. "Ethan, come meet Morgan." The next hour flew by as we talked about everything and nothing. Ethan was charming, self-deprecating, and actually listened when I spoke. He told me about his work as a financial consultant, his love for obscure documentaries, and his teenage son Tyler. "Single dad?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Divorced," he replied, something flickering behind his eyes. "Tyler lives with his mom most of the time, but we're working on rebuilding our relationship." There was weight to those words, a story he wasn't telling. Before I could probe further, his phone buzzed. The change in his expression was subtle but immediate, like a cloud passing over the sun. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Just Tyler," he said, typing rapidly. "Teenager stuff. You know how it is." But his hands were shaking slightly as he put the phone away, and that easy smile seemed more forced now. The party was winding down when Ethan asked for my number. "I'd love to take you to dinner sometime," he said. "There's this great little Italian place downtown." I hesitated. My heart was still bruised, and something about his earlier reaction to that text nagged at me. But there was also something magnetic about him, something that made me want to know more. "I'd like that," I heard myself say. As I was leaving, I overheard a snippet of conversation from the kitchen. A woman's voice, tense and urgent. "Ethan, you can't keep covering for him. This has to stop." I glanced back to see Ethan with an elegant blonde woman, not much older than me, but with a hardness around her eyes that aged her. His ex-wife. They fell silent when they noticed me, and Ethan quickly stepped away, flashing that perfect smile again. "Drive safe, Morgan," he called out. "I'll call you tomorrow." That night, I lay awake thinking about Ethan's warm laugh and interesting stories. But I also couldn't shake the memory of his trembling hands, that whispered conversation, and the shadow that crossed his face when he mentioned his son. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Thank you for making tonight bearable. Dinner tomorrow? Ethan." I stared at the message, my finger hovering over the reply button. Something told me that saying yes would set events in motion that I couldn't control. But isn't that what I came to Seattle for? A fresh start, a new story? I typed yes and hit send, not knowing then that this simple response would lead me down a path that would test everything I thought I knew about love, trust, and the price of keeping secrets. 3 weeks into dating Ethan, and I still couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. The restaurant was perfect, the conversation flowed easily, and Ethan was as charming as ever. But every time his phone buzzed, that familiar tension would creep back into his shoulders. "Tyler's coming over tomorrow," he mentioned casually, pushing his pasta around his plate. "I thought maybe you could join us for dinner?" My fork paused halfway to my mouth. "Are you sure? Meeting your son? That's a big step." "It's just dinner," Ethan said, but his knuckles whitened around his wine glass. "Besides, he should know who's making his father so happy." I agreed, trying to ignore the knot forming in my stomach. The next evening, I arrived at Ethan's modern townhouse clutching a homemade apple pie, a peace offering of sorts. Tyler answered the door, tall and lanky like his father, but with none of Ethan's warmth. His eyes, sharp and calculating, sized me up in seconds. "Another one?" he called over his shoulder. "Really, Dad?" Ethan appeared behind him, shooting me an apologetic look. "Tyler, we talked about this." The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. During dinner, Tyler barely touched his food, responding to questions with monosyllabic grunts. I tried making conversation about school, his interests, anything, but each attempt hit a wall of teenage hostility. "So, Tyler," Ethan said, his voice forcefully cheerful, "how's that business project going?" Tyler's head snapped up, something like panic flashing across his face before being replaced by careful neutrality. "Fine. Business project?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Tyler's quite the entrepreneur," Ethan explained. "He's starting an online." "It's nothing," Tyler cut in. "Just a stupid school thing." The doorbell rang, making both stone men jump. Tyler checked his phone and stood abruptly. "That's Mom. I'm out." "Valerie's here?" Ethan's voice had an edge I'd never heard before. He followed Tyler to the door, leaving me alone at the table. I couldn't help but overhear their conversation in the hallway. "You can't keep throwing money at this problem, Ethan." Valerie's voice was low but intense. "He needs help, not enablement." "I'm handling it," Ethan hissed back. "Like you handled everything else?" "He's following in your footsteps, and not the good ones." "Not now, Val. Please." I busied myself clearing plates when they returned. Valerie stood in the doorway, elegant and imposing in her designer suit. Her eyes met mine and I saw something like pity in them. "You must be Morgan," she said. "I've heard so much about you." "All good things, I hope," I managed, hating how small my voice sounded. "Of course," she smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Ethan always speaks highly of his friends." The emphasis on that last word wasn't lost on me. After they left, Ethan poured himself a generous whiskey. "I'm sorry about tonight. Tyler's been going through some things." "What kind of things?" I asked carefully. "Teenage stuff. Nothing serious." He knocked back the drink. "Listen, I need to make some calls. Work emergency. Rain check on dessert." Later that night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Tyler's panic when Ethan mentioned the business project, Valerie's cryptic warnings, the way both father and son seemed to be dancing around some unspoken secret. My phone lit up with a text from Jenna. "How was dinner with the future stepson?" Winking face. I started typing. "Something's not right. I think Ethan and Tyler are." I deleted it. What exactly did I think they were doing? I had no proof of anything except a tense family dynamic, which was hardly unusual in divorce situations. Another text came through, this time from an unknown number. "Stay away from Ethan and Tyler. You don't know what you're getting into." I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. The message disappeared before my eyes. leaving me wondering if I'd imagined it. But the sick feeling in my stomach told me this was just the beginning of whatever I'd stumbled into. I never meant to snoop. But when Ethan left his study door open while taking a shower, the scattered papers on his desk seemed to call out to me. The anonymous text from last week still haunted me, and I needed answers. My hands trembled as I approached his desk. Bank statements, investment reports, and what looked like loan documents lay spread across the surface. One number caught my eye. A wire transfer to Tyler's account for $50,000. The shower was still running upstairs. I dug deeper, finding more transfers. $20,000 here, $30,000 there. All to Tyler, all within the last few months. My stomach churned as I noticed a pattern. The transfers usually happened late at night, often followed by angry text exchanges I glimpsed on Ethan's unlocked tablet. Need more. They're not happy with the last payment. Tyler, this has to stop. I can't keep covering for you. Ethan, you don't understand what they'll do. Tyler. The shower stopped. I quickly straightened the papers, but a manila envelope slipped from beneath them, spilling photographs across the floor. My heart nearly stopped. They were surveillance photos. Tyler meeting with men in dark cars, exchanging envelopes in parking lots. In one photo he looked terrified, his face bruised. Find anything interesting? I spun around. Tyler stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. I was just looking for a pen, I stammered. No, you were looking for answers. He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. Did you find what you wanted to know? Tyler, are you in trouble? He laughed, but it was hollow. Trouble doesn't begin to cover it. And now you're in it too. What does that mean? It means you should have listened to that warning text. My shock must have shown because he added, yeah, that was me. I thought maybe you'd be smart enough to walk away. Footsteps on the stairs. Tyler moved closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. Don't tell my dad about this conversation. For your own good. The door opened and Ethan appeared, hair still damp. Everything okay in here? Just getting to know Morgan better, Tyler said, his tone completely changed. She was telling me about her work at the dental office. I forced a smile, my heart racing. Right. Very fascinating stuff about plaque and gingivitis. That evening, I made an excuse to leave early. As I drove home, my phone buzzed with a text from Valerie. We need to talk. Tomorrow 2 p.m. Cascade Coffee on 5th. Come alone. I nearly swerved off the road when another text followed. Delete these messages. Don't tell Ethan. The next day, I arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early, jumping at every sound. Valerie swept in exactly at 2, looking immaculate in a business suit. Thank you for coming, she said, sitting down. I assume you've started noticing things aren't quite what they seem with the stone men. I nodded, unable to find words. What I'm about to tell you. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Let's just say there's a reason Ethan and I divorced, and it wasn't irreconcilable differences. The money transfers to Tyler are just the tip of the iceberg. She pulled out her phone, showing me a news article from 3 years ago. Ethan's investment firm collapsed after clients accused him of running a Ponzi scheme. He was cleared of charges, but some of his clients weren't the type to care about legal proceedings. They wanted their money back by any means necessary. She put her phone away. Now Tyler's caught up in their web too. My mind raced, connecting dots. The business venture. Is Tyler trying to gambling his way out of his father's debt? Valerie's eyes filled with tears. And I'm afraid they're both in too deep to save themselves. As I left the coffee shop, my phone buzzed again. A text from Tyler. Hope Mom filled you in. Now you have a choice to make. Help us or walk away. But choose fast. We're running out of time. Attached was a photo of Ethan in his office, unaware he was being watched through the window. The timestamp showed it was taken 10 minutes ago. I stared at the image, realizing I had crossed a point of no return. Whatever I chose to do next would change everything for all of us. I sat in Jenna's living room, my hands wrapped around a cold cup of tea, trying to make sense of everything I'd learned. The same room where I'd first met Ethan now felt like a different universe entirely. Let me get this straight, Jenna said, pacing. Ethan's ex-clients are threatening him, Tyler's gambling to pay them off, and you found surveillance photos? That's not even the worst part. I pulled out my phone, showing her Tyler's latest text. I think someone's watching Ethan's office. Jenna grabbed her laptop. What was the name of his investment firm? Stone Financial Solutions. Why? Her fingers flew across the keyboard. Because something's not adding up. Here, look at this. She turned the screen toward me. It was a financial news article from 2 years ago. Former Stone Financial CEO linked to offshore accounts. The article's been scrubbed from most sites, Jenna explained, but I found it cached. The money that disappeared? It wasn't lost in bad investments. My stomach dropped. You think Ethan stole it? I think. Jenna's words were cut off by my phone ringing. Tyler's name flashed on the screen. Morgan. His voice was shaky. I need help. I'm at the Grand Casino. Please don't tell my dad. Tyler, what happened? They're here. The men Dad owes money to. They saw me winning and... A muffled sound then. Just hurry. Please. I was already grabbing my keys. I'm calling your father. No. The panic in his voice stopped me. They said if Dad shows up, they'll release everything. The proof of what he did, where the money really went. It'll destroy him. Jenna grabbed my arm. This feels like a trap. She was right, but I couldn't shake the terror in Tyler's voice. I have to go. Then I'm calling the police. And tell them what? That my boyfriend's son is gambling illegally? That'll just make everything worse. The casino parking lot was nearly empty when I arrived. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Loading dock. Come alone. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, but I thought about Tyler, just a kid really, and way over his head. I found the loading dock, my heels echoing in the darkness. Hello. You actually came. Tyler stepped out of the shadows, but he wasn't alone. A man in an expensive suit stood beside him, looking amused. Tyler, are you okay? He's fine, the man said smoothly. Just helping us send a message to his father. You see, Ethan Stone doesn't just owe us money. He owes us revenge. I don't understand. No. He pulled out a phone, showing me a video. It was Ethan younger sitting across from the same man. They were laughing, planning something. Something illegal. Your boyfriend didn't just steal from his clients, the man explained. He stole from his partners. Set us up to take the fall when it all went south. But now, he smiled coldly. Now we have his son. And his girlfriend. Tyler wouldn't meet my eyes. I'm sorry, Morgan. They promised if I helped get you here, they'd leave Dad alone. You really think they'll keep that promise? Enough talking. The man cut in. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to call Ethan. Tell him to bring the real records, all of them, to this address in 1 hour. If he doesn't... My phone buzzed again. A text from Jenna. Police on their way. Stall them. I looked at Tyler, saw the fear behind his attempt at bravado. Saw how much he was like his father, trying to fix everything himself, only making it worse. Okay, I said, pulling out my phone. I'll call him. But as I dialed, I wasn't calling Ethan. I was choosing sides in a war I never wanted to join, hoping I was betting on the right people. Because sometimes I was learning the only way to save someone is to first destroy their carefully constructed lies. The police arrived just as everything started falling apart. Blue and red lights flooded the loading dock. But instead of relief, I felt a new kind of terror as Tyler bolted into the darkness and the man in the suit simply smiled. As if this too was part of his plan. Morgan Rivers? An officer approached. Your friend Jenna called us. Are you all right? Before I could answer, my phone lit up with Ethan's name. The man in the suit caught my eye and mouthed something that looked like tick-tock before melting into the shadows. I'm fine, I told the officer. Just a misunderstanding. But nothing was fine. Tyler was gone, and I had no idea whose side I was really on anymore. I answered Ethan's call with shaking hands. Where's Tyler? His voice was raw, desperate. The casino's security called me. We need to talk. Not over the phone. 20 minutes later, I sat across from Ethan in an all-night diner, watching his perfect facade crumble as I laid out everything I knew. The gambling, the threats, the offshore accounts. You don't understand, he said, running his hands through his hair. Those men, they're not just former business partners. They're dangerous people who you set up to take the fall, I finished. I saw the video, Ethan. His face went pale. What video? Does it matter? What matters is Tyler is out there somewhere, thinking he has to save you from your own mistakes. You think I don't know that? His fist slammed the table, making our coffee cups rattle. Everything I've done, everything was to protect him. By lying, by letting him gamble away his future, by trying to fix what I broke. The raw pain in his voice made me flinch. When the firm collapsed, those men threatened Tyler. Said they'd hurt him unless I paid them back double what they lost. The gambling was his idea. His way of trying to help. My phone buzzed. A text from Tyler. Meet me at Riverside Park. Alone. I know how to fix this. He's texting you, isn't he? Ethan's eyes were desperate. Morgan, please. Don't go alone. But I was already standing. You lost the right to make that call when you dragged everyone into your mess. The park was deserted at this hour, mist rolling in from the river. I found Tyler by the old carousel, looking younger and more vulnerable than I'd ever seen him. I got the records, he said without preamble, pulling out a USB drive. Everything Dad did, everyone he hurt. If we give this to them, they'll destroy your father. Maybe he deserves it. But his voice cracked on the words. And what about you? The gambling, the lies. Was that all just to protect him? Tyler's laugh was bitter. You know what's funny? I started gambling thinking I could win enough to pay them off, save Dad. Then I started winning and it felt good. Like for once I was in control. But you weren't. No. He looked at the USB drive. And now they own us both. Footsteps behind us. We turned to see Valerie emerging from the shadows. Mom. Tyler's voice was small, like a child's. Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out? She moved closer, her heels clicking on the pavement. The late nights, the money transfers, the way you both jumped every time your phones buzzed? She held out her hand to Tyler. Give me the drive. You don't know what's on it, he protested. I know exactly what's on it. Because I'm the one who created those records in the first place. My head spun as another piece of the puzzle clicked into place. Valerie hadn't just been Ethan's wife. She'd been his company's chief financial officer. The question isn't what's on that drive, she continued, her eyes meeting mine. The question is, what are we going to do with it? I looked between them, mother and son, each carrying pieces of a story I was only beginning to understand. And I realized that sometimes the path to justice isn't about choosing sides. It's about creating a new path altogether. The USB drive felt impossibly heavy in my hand as Valerie led us to her car. The night had turned cold, matching the chill that had settled in my chest. Tyler sat in the back seat, silent, while his mother drove us to what she called the only place left to fix this. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Ethan's desperate messages, Jenna's worried texts, and one new number that just sent coordinates and a countdown timer. They're watching us, Valerie said, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. Have been since the casino. Why didn't you tell anyone? I asked. About the records, about your involvement? Because admitting I helped create the problem wouldn't solve it. She caught Tyler's eye in the rearview mirror. Sometimes protecting the people you love means carrying secrets that could destroy them. We pulled up to an abandoned office building, the former headquarters of Stone Financial Solutions. The irony wasn't lost on me. Mom, we can't, Tyler started. We can and we will. Valerie's voice was steel. It's time to end this. The man from the casino was already waiting inside, along with two others in expensive suits. They looked more like board members than thugs, which somehow made them more terrifying. The prodigal family returns, the first man smiled. And they brought a guest. We have what you want, Valerie said, nodding at the drive in my hand. Do you? He turned to me. Miss Rivers, did they tell you what's really on that drive? Not just evidence of Ethan's betrayal, but proof that his ex-wife orchestrated the whole thing. My head snapped toward Valerie. She didn't flinch. The perfect setup, he continued. Ethan takes the fall, Valerie walks away clean with millions, and poor Tyler becomes the bargaining chip neither parent can afford to lose. That's not. Tyler stepped forward, but one of the men pulled out a gun. Careful, kid. Wouldn't want to end up like your father's last partner. The words hit me like a physical blow. What happened to the partner? Ask Valerie. She was there the night he had his accident. I looked at Tyler's mother, searching for denial in her face. Found none. You don't understand, she said quietly. What these men wanted, what they still want, it was never just about money. No, the man agreed. It was about power, control, the rush of playing God with other people's lives. Isn't that right, Valerie? My phone buzzed again. Ethan. Don't trust anyone. On my way. But who could I trust? Ethan, who'd hidden his past. Valerie, who might be playing us all. Tyler, caught between loyalty and survival? Enough games, the man said. The drive, Miss Rivers. Now. I held it tight, knowing it contained enough evidence to destroy everyone in this room, including Tyler's chance at a normal life. Morgan, please, Tyler's voice cracked. Whatever's on there, whatever they say about mom or dad, they're still my parents. The man's gun shifted slightly. Parents who've lied to him his entire life, who've used him as a pawn in their little power games. Maybe it's time someone showed him the truth. The truth. I laughed, and it sounded hollow even to me. The truth is you're all so caught up in revenge and power that you've forgotten there's a 17-year-old kid's life at stake. Then give us the drive, he said softly, and we'll make sure he stays safe. I looked at Tyler, saw the fear and hope warring in his eyes. At Valerie, her mask finally cracking to show the desperate mother beneath. At the USB drive that held enough secrets to burn everyone's carefully constructed worlds to the ground. The sound of approaching sirens cut through the tension. The man's smile turned predatory. Time to choose, Miss Rivers. Who burns and who walks away? I made my decision just as the doors burst open, revealing Ethan with a gun of his own. Our eyes met across the room, and I saw the same realization in his face that I felt in my heart. Sometimes saving someone means being willing to lose them first. I dropped the drive and crushed it under my heel. The gunshot that followed seemed almost quiet in comparison to Tyler's scream. The hospital waiting room felt like limbo. Tyler hadn't left Ethan's bedside since the surgery, while Valerie paced the hallway, her designer heels clicking a rhythm that matched my pounding heart. The bullet had missed Ethan's heart by inches. A warning shot, the man had said, before the police burst in. But we all knew this wasn't over. They'll come back, Valerie said, finally stopping her pacing. They always do. Then we end this. Tonight. I pulled out my phone, showing her the backup drive I'd hidden in my cloud storage. You weren't the only one keeping receipts. Her eyes widened. You copied the files? Insurance. But not the version they wanted. I managed a grim smile. I edited it. Changed just enough details to implicate their entire operation without destroying your family. Why would you? Because Tyler deserves a chance at a normal life. And maybe you and Ethan do too. The elevator dinged and 3 men in suits stepped out. Not the ones from before, but cut from the same cloth. Corporate sharks smelling blood in the water. Miss Rivers, the tallest one said smoothly. A word. I followed them to a private waiting area, feeling Valerie's eyes on my back. They didn't bother with introductions. Our associates were impressed with your initiative earlier, he said. Destroying the drive was unexpected. Bold. The kind of move that suggests you understand the game better than most. This isn't a game. Everything's a game, Miss Rivers. The question is, which side are you playing for? I thought of Ethan lying in that hospital bed, of Tyler's face when the shot rang out, of all the lies and secrets that had led us here. I'm not playing for any side, I said, pulling out my phone. I'm changing the rules. I showed them the edited files, enough evidence to bring down their operation, but carefully curated to protect Tyler's future. You release these, you go down too, the man warned. Maybe. But I've already sent copies to every major news outlet and federal agency. Dead man's switch. If anything happens to any of us, it all goes public. The second man stepped forward, menacing. You're bluffing. Try me. I've got nothing left to lose. I met his gaze steadily. But you? You've got everything to lose. What do you want? Simple. You walk away. Leave the stones alone. Find new players for your power games. And if we refuse? I pressed a button on my phone. Then the first batch of files releases in 60 seconds. The tension in the room could have cracked glass. The men exchanged looks, having a silent conversation I couldn't read. You know, the first man said finally. Ethan said something similar once. Right before he betrayed us. I'm not Ethan. No. He studied me carefully. You're something far more dangerous. A true believer. My phone buzzed. Valerie's text. Tyler found something in Ethan's room. Get back here. 40 seconds. I reminded them. The leader nodded slightly. Cancel the release. You've made your point. He turned to leave, then paused. But remember, Miss Rivers, changing the rules doesn't mean the game is over. It just means the players get more creative. I waited until they were gone before my legs gave out. Valerie found me there, shaking. Morgan? What did you do? What you and Ethan couldn't, I managed. I chose truth over power. She helped me up, leading me to Ethan's room. Tyler stood by the window holding a letter. Dad woke up, he said quietly. Asked me to give you this. The letter was short, written in Ethan's unsteady hand. Morgan, I should have trusted you from the start. Maybe then we could have avoided all this. But watching you fight for my son, for our family, even after learning the worst of me, I finally understand what real strength looks like. Whatever you did to make them leave, thank you. And I'm sorry. I looked up to find Tyler and Valerie watching me, their faces showing the same mix of hope and fear I felt. So, Tyler asked, what happens now? I folded the letter carefully. Now we learn how to live without secrets. 6 months after the shooting, I stood in front of an easel in my apartment, trying to capture the way sunset painted Seattle's skyline in shades of redemption. The painting wasn't perfect like everything else in my life now, but it was honest. The door buzzed. Tyler, right on time for our weekly dinner. That's new, he said, nodding at the canvas while dropping his backpack. He looked healthier now, the shadows under his eyes replaced by a teenager's natural energy. Just a hobby I picked up in therapy. I wiped paint from my hands. How's the counseling going? Good. Dad came to group today. He helped me set the table, a routine we'd fallen into naturally. He actually talked about the old days, about why he made the choices he did. And I think I finally understand. Not just what he did, but why Mom stayed quiet for so long. They both thought they were protecting me. The irony wasn't lost on either of us, how protection through secrets had nearly destroyed us all. Dinner was interrupted by a knock. Valerie stood in the hallway, holding a familiar-looking envelope. They're really gone, she said without preamble, stepping inside. My contacts confirmed it. The whole organization's disbanded. Just like that? Tyler asked. No, I said, taking the envelope. Not just like that. Your mother's been working with the FBI for months, hasn't she? Valerie's slight smile was answer enough. Let's just say those edited files you created gave them exactly the opening they needed. The envelope contained newspaper clippings, financial crimes, arrests, corporations dismantled. The kind of justice that happens in boardrooms rather than courtrooms, but justice nonetheless. Does Dad know? Tyler asked. He will, Valerie replied. When he's ready. We ate together, this strange new family built from the wreckage of secrets and lies. Afterward, Tyler helped me clean up while Valerie examined my painting. You know, she said thoughtfully, the gallery attached to my office has been looking for new artists. Local voices, raw talent. I'm not an artist, I protested. I just needed a way to process everything. Sometimes that's exactly what art is. She touched the canvas gently, finding beauty in the breakdown. Tyler emerged from the kitchen, phone in hand. Dad's asking if we're still on for Saturday. The weekly family dinners had been his idea. A chance to rebuild trust one meal at a time. Ethan was healing both physically and emotionally. Our relationship was complicated, but maybe that's what made it real. Tell him yes, I said. But remind him it's his turn to cook. After they left, I returned to my painting. The cityscape had changed while we ate. Darkness creeping in, lights flickering to life. Like secrets coming to light, I thought, adding touches of brightness to the shadows. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. You changed the game. Remember what that means. I stared at the message, feeling an old fear stir. Then I deleted it, turned off my phone, and picked up my brush again. Some threats were just echoes now, and I refused to let them haunt us anymore. The painting took shape under my hands. Not just Seattle's skyline, but the story of us. The dark and light, the secrets and truths, the broken pieces made beautiful by how they'd been repaired. In the corner, I signed my name for the first time, Morgan Rivers. Not just a dental hygienist who stumbled into someone else's drama, but a woman who learned that sometimes saving a family means first letting it break apart. Tyler had left his sketchbook behind. He'd started drawing recently too. Inside, I found a note. Thanks for not giving up on us, even when we deserved it. I smiled, adding one final touch to my painting. A small figure on a rooftop facing the sunset. Not hiding anymore, not running, just standing in their truth. Sometimes I was learning that's all the redemption we need.
I was elbow-deep in white silk and lace when my mother-in-law's name flashed across my phone screen. Eleanor never called during business hours unless something was wrong, so my stomach did a little flip as I grabbed it. "Dana, darling, I need your help," she said, her voice carrying that familiar mix of sweetness and urgency that always preceded a family crisis. "Veronica's engaged again." I closed my eyes and counted to 3. My sister-in-law's engagements were becoming as predictable as seasonal allergies, except they caused more headaches. "That's wonderful," I managed, while carefully setting down the custom veil I'd been working on. "Who's the lucky guy this time?" "Jonathan Brooks, the real estate developer. You must have heard of him." Eleanor's voice rose with pride. "But Dana, sweetheart, that's not why I'm calling. Veronica wants you to design her wedding dress." The pins I was holding clattered to the floor. "Me? But she hates my work. Last Christmas she told everyone my designs were quaint and provincial." "Oh, she didn't mean that." Eleanor rushed to defend her daughter, as usual. "She's different now. Jonathan's helped her mature. Besides, your family, and she specifically requested you." I glanced around my boutique, taking in the dozens of wedding dresses in various stages of completion. My small team was already working overtime to meet our summer wedding commitments. "Eleanor, I'm booked solid for the next 6 months. When exactly is this wedding?" 8 weeks from Saturday." 8 weeks? I nearly choked. "That's impossible. Even basic alterations take." "Money isn't an issue," Eleanor interrupted. "Jonathan's very generous. Veronica says she'll pay whatever it takes." I walked to my office window, watching people hurry past on the busy Chicago street below. My reflection stared back at me, tired eyes, messy bun, and the determined expression I'd worn since opening this place 5 years ago. "Does Ethan know about this?" "I'm calling him next," Eleanor said. "But Dana, please. You know how important this is to Veronica. She's 40 now, and after 3 failed engagements." Her voice trailed off meaningfully. The guilt trip was right on schedule. I thought about my husband Ethan, caught between his dramatic sister and his wife, and how this would affect our relatively peaceful home life. Our kids, Lily and Noah, were still traumatized from Veronica's last wedding attempt, where she'd made them practice their flower girl and ring bearer duties for 6 hours straight. "I'll need to think about it," I said finally. "Let me talk to Ethan first." "Of course, darling. But please don't take too long. Veronica's coming by your shop tomorrow morning to discuss designs." "She's what?" But Eleanor had already hung up. I sank into my chair, mind racing. Veronica had spent years dismissing my business as a cute little hobby. Now she wanted me to design the dress for what she'd undoubtedly bill as the society wedding of the year. Something wasn't adding up. My phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. "Mom just called. We need to talk tonight." Before I could reply, another message came through, this one from Sarah, my sister-in-law married to Ethan's younger brother Mark. "Heard about V's latest victim. You okay? Whined tonight." I started typing a response when my office door opened. Jenny, my assistant, poked her head in. "Dana, there's a delivery for you." She handed me an enormous arrangement of white roses with a card that read, "To my talented sister-in-law. Can't wait to collaborate on creating the perfect dress. Love, Veronica." The flowers were beautiful, expensive, and absolutely not Veronica's style. As I stared at the elaborate arrangement, a chill ran down my spine. My sister-in-law was many things, but she was never nice without a reason. Whatever game she was playing, I had a feeling I was about to become an unwilling participant. I picked up my phone and texted Sarah back. Make it a bottle. Maybe two. Sarah's wine nights were usually our chance to unwind and laugh about family drama, but tonight felt different. We sat in her cozy kitchen while Mark and Ethan took the kids to a movie, giving us space to process the Veronica situation. I still can't believe she sent flowers, Sarah said, pouring her second glass. When's the last time Veronica did anything nice for anyone? The Christmas she gave everyone gift certificates to that meditation studio she invested in, I replied. Right before it went bankrupt. Ah yes, the great Zen scam of 2021. Sarah rolled her eyes. Why you? I'd been asking myself the same question all day. Maybe she's changed? Eleanor seems to think Jonathan's been a good influence. Sarah snorted. Or maybe she's planning something. Remember what happened with her last wedding dress designer? The memory made me wince. The poor woman had suffered a very public meltdown after Veronica trashed her reputation on social media, claiming the dress had ruined her perfect day. The designer closed her shop 6 months later. My phone buzzed, another text from Veronica. Can't wait for tomorrow. Bringing some magazine clippings for inspiration. Think Vera Wong meets Alexander McQueen, but make it uniquely me. Uniquely her? Sarah read over my shoulder. Does she mean impossible and overpriced? Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. Sarah frowned. Are the guys back already? But it wasn't the guys. It was Eleanor, clutching her designer handbag like a shield. I hoped I'd find you both here, she said, stepping into the kitchen. We need to talk about tomorrow. My stomach tightened. Eleanor, I haven't even agreed to. Veronica's bringing a reporter from Chicago Style magazine, she interrupted. They're doing a feature on local wedding designers, and she's convinced them to spotlight your boutique. Sarah's hand found mine under the table as I processed this. Without asking me first, it's an amazing opportunity, Eleanor pressed. Could destroy my business if anything goes wrong, I finished. You know how Veronica can be. Eleanor's face hardened slightly. What exactly are you implying about my daughter? Mom. Mark's voice came from the doorway. He and Ethan stood there, kids in tow, looking confused. What's going on? Just discussing Dana's exciting opportunity, Eleanor said brightly. Veronica's arranged. Ambushed, Sarah muttered. A wonderful feature in Chicago Style magazine. Ethan's eyes met mine across the room. After 12 years of marriage, I could read his expression perfectly, torn between supporting me and keeping peace with his family. The kids are tired, he said finally. We should head home. The drive home was quiet until Lily and Noah were safely tucked in bed. Then Ethan joined me in our bedroom, where I was angrily folding laundry. You don't have to do it, he said softly. Don't I? I threw a sock into the drawer, with more force than necessary. Your mother's already told half of Chicago about it. If I back out now, I look unprofessional and ungrateful. Since when do you care what people think? Since your sister made it her mission to turn every family event into a PR opportunity. The words burst out before I could stop them. I'm sorry, but Ethan, this feels wrong. The flowers, the magazine, it's like she's setting something up and I'm walking right into it. He was quiet for a moment. Maybe she's trying to make amends. Or maybe she's trying to make sure I can't say no without looking like the bad guy. I sat heavily on the bed. You know what the worst part is? Part of me wants to do it. To prove I can create something so beautiful even Veronica can't criticize it. Et hansat besidema, dock in my hand. Whatever you decide, I'm on your side. But as I lay awake later, his gentle snores beside me, I wondered if that was true. Tomorrow, Veronica would sweep into my boutique with her entourage and her demands, and everyone would expect me to smile and play along. The question wasn't whether I could create her perfect dress. It was whether I could survive being pulled into her orbit without losing myself in the process. My phone lit up with one final text from Veronica. Sweet dreams, sis. Tomorrow's going to be unforgettable. I had a sinking feeling she was right about that. I should have known something was wrong when Veronica showed up to my boutique alone. No entourage, no reporter, not even Eleanor hovering anxiously in the background. Just my sister-in-law in a cream-colored pantsuit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. "The magazine shoot's been postponed," she announced, breezing past me to examine a rack of sample dresses. "Creative differences with the editor. But that's not important right now." My shoulders relaxed slightly. "So, we can take our time with the consultation?" "Oh no, we still need to move quickly." She pulled out her phone, scrolling through photos. "Jonathan's planning a big announcement at the Chicago Business Awards next month. We need everything perfect by then." Something in her tone made me pause. "What kind of announcement?" "Just boring business stuff." She waved dismissively. "Now, about my dress. I'm thinking something dramatic. Statement making. The kind of dress people will remember." "Like your last 3 wedding dresses?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. Veronica's perfectly lined eyes narrowed. "Those were practice runs. This is the real deal. Jonathan's different." "Different how?" "He's successful. Connected. The kind of man who can make things happen." She moved closer, lowering her voice. "Did you know he's on the board of the Chicago Fashion Council?" My hand froze on the silk sample I was holding. The Fashion Council controlled everything from industry events to small business grants in the city's fashion scene. I'd been trying to get their attention for years. "Interesting timing," I said carefully. "You getting engaged to someone so relevant to my business." "Isn't it?" Veronica smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Jonathan's very impressed by what you've built here. He might even be interested in investing." The pieces clicked into place. "Is that what this is about? Using your wedding dress to get Jonathan's attention?" "Don't be dramatic, Dana. I'm offering you an opportunity. Your little boutique could become something real." "My boutique is real," I said, heat rising in my cheeks. "We're booked solid for months. We've won local awards." "Local awards?" She laughed. "Oh, sweetie, don't you want more? Jonathan could make you the premier bridal designer in Chicago. All you have to do is make me look perfect on my big day." I stepped back, studying my sister-in-law's face. "And if something goes wrong? Like with your last designer?" "Nothing will go wrong," she said smoothly. "Because you're family. And family doesn't disappoint each other, right?" Before I could respond, my assistant Jenny burst in. "Dana? There's someone here asking about Veronica's wedding. Says she's from the Tribune." Veronica's composure cracked for just a second. "I should go. We'll discuss designs tomorrow." She was out the door before I could reply, leaving me with a growing sense of unease. I waited until Jenny left, then called Sarah. "I need you to look up something about Jonathan Brooks," I said when she answered. "Specifically, his connection to the Fashion Council." "Already did," Sarah replied. "After last night, I got curious." "Dana, he's not on the board. He's never been involved with them at all." My stomach dropped. "Are you sure?" "Positive. But here's what's interesting. His company's in trouble. There are rumors about bankruptcy, failed developments. Some people are saying he's looking for a way to save face. Or looking for someone to save him," I muttered, remembering Veronica's calculated smile. "What are you going to do?" I looked at the wedding dresses surrounding me, each one representing a bride's dreams and trust. "I'm going to make her dress," I said finally. "But I'm also going to find out what she's really planning." "Be careful," Sarah warned. "You know how Veronica gets when she's cornered." After hanging up, I noticed a magazine had fallen from Veronica's bag. It was open to an article about Jonathan Brooks, with a handwritten note in the margin. Perfect target, desperate enough to believe anything. My phone buzzed with a text from Veronica. "By the way, Jonathan's invited some very important people to the wedding. Your future could depend on how this goes. No pressure." Face blowing a kiss. I stared at the message, my hands shaking slightly. She wasn't just trying to use me, she was threatening me. Well, two could play at that game. If Veronica wanted a memorable wedding dress, I'd give her one she'd never forget. 3 weeks into designing Veronica's wedding dress, I found myself working late again, surrounded by crumpled sketches and fabric samples she'd rejected. My phone buzzed with another of her urgent texts. Changed my mind about the neckline, thinking something more dramatic. Can we meet tomorrow? 7 a.m. I didn't reply. Instead, I gathered my things, ready to head home, when I heard voices from the boutique's front room. Through the partially open door, I spotted Jonathan Brooks talking to Jenny, who was staying late to handle paperwork. Mrs. Whitaker's gone for the day, Jenny was saying. Actually, I'm here to discuss something else. Jonathan's voice was smooth, practiced. We're looking to acquire some properties in this area. Your lease agreement, specifically. My heart stopped. I pressed closer to the door. The building owner's been difficult, Jonathan continued. But once the wedding's over, I'm sure we can convince him to sell. Of course, current tenants will need to relocate. But this location is perfect for us, Jenny protested. We have clients booked months in advance. Business is business. Though I'm sure we could arrange something, depending on how smoothly the wedding preparations go. I'd heard enough. I stepped into the room, making both of them jump. Jenny, could you give us a minute? Once she left, Jonathan's businessman's smile faltered slightly. Dana, I was just threatening my business to ensure good behavior. I kept my voice steady, though my hands were shaking. Does Veronica know about this? Veronica understands what's at stake. This wedding needs to be perfect. The right people are watching. The right people for what? He checked his watch. You should ask your sister-in-law about that. Just remember, your cooperation could make things much easier for everyone. After he left, I called Sarah, but it went to voicemail. Then I tried Ethan. I can't talk now, he said when he answered. I'm at dinner with Veronica and Mom. Without me. A pause. You said you were working late because your sister keeps changing her mind about everything. I took a breath. Ethan, Jonathan was just here. He's planning to force us out of the building after the wedding. That doesn't sound right. Mom says Jonathan's been nothing but generous. Of course she does, I snapped. Your mother thinks Veronica's incapable of doing anything wrong. Dana. No, I'm done. Either you help me figure out what they're really planning, or what? His voice hardened. You'll sabotage the wedding? Make things worse. The line went quiet except for background chatter. I recognized Veronica's laugh, followed by Eleanor's voice. Is that Dana? Tell her we missed her at dinner. Though Veronica's wedding planner had some wonderful ideas about the dress. I hung up before I could hear more. 10 minutes later, an email arrived from an anonymous account. Financial records showing Jonathan's company was nearly bankrupt, along with a draft press release announcing his engagement to prominent Chicago socialite Veronica Hastings and their plans to merge their business interests. My phone buzzed again. Veronica. Hope you're making progress on the dress. By the way, Jonathan mentioned stopping by. Such a shame about your lease situation. But I'm sure we can work something out. If the dress is perfect, face-blowing a kiss. I looked around my boutique, at the dreams I'd built, the clients who trusted me, the employees who depended on me. Then I looked at the wedding dress mock-up on my mannequin, already bearing Veronica's demanding alterations. The silk would tear easily if the seams were sewn just slightly wrong. The beading could come loose at the worst moment if attached improperly. Small imperfections that wouldn't be noticeable until it was too late. But as I touched the fabric, I remembered my own wedding dress, how it had made me feel beautiful and strong. Even Veronica deserved that moment. Didn't she? My phone lit up one last time. Sarah. Found something about Jonathan and Veronica you need to see. It's worse than we thought. I stared at the message, then at the dress. I'd always believed in creating beauty, in making dreams come true. But sometimes I realized the kindest thing you can do is wake someone up from their dream before it becomes a nightmare. The question was, how far was I willing to go to make that happen? Sarah's discovery about Jonathan and Veronica turned out to be worse than any of us imagined. We met at her house, where she spread documents across her kitchen table, bank statements, court records, and newspaper clippings. 3 other women, Sarah said, pointing to the articles. All within the last 2 years. Jonathan proposes, announces business mergers, then somehow ends up with controlling interest in their companies before the wedding. Then he vanishes, leaving them bankrupt. My hands shook as I read. And Veronica knows about this? She's not a victim, Dana. She's his partner. Sarah pulled up an email chain. They've been planning this for months. The wedding, the dress, the press coverage, it's all about making Jonathan look legitimate to potential investors. I thought about my boutique, about Jonathan's threats. They're using my reputation to boost their credibility.
Exactly.
And once they're done, Sarah didn't need to finish. My phone buzzed. Veronica was at the boutique for her final fitting. I'd been dreading this moment, but now it felt like an opportunity. When I arrived, she was already wearing the dress, admiring herself in the mirror while Eleanor fussed with the train. "It's stunning," Eleanor gushed. "Dana, you've outdone yourself." Veronica turned, the silk rustling. "It'll do, though the beading could be more elaborate. The society photographers will be looking for something spectacular." The same photographers who covered Jonathan's last 3 almost weddings? The words slipped out before I could stop them. The room went silent. Eleanor's hands froze on the dress. "I don't know what you're talking about," Veronica said, but her reflection showed a flicker of panic. "I think you do." I moved closer, adjusting the dress with practiced hands. "It's a clever scheme. Use my reputation to make the wedding look legitimate, then destroy my business once you've got what you want." "Dana," Eleanor gasped. "How dare you accuse your sister-in-law?" "It's fine, Mother," Veronica interrupted, her voice steel-sharp. "Dana's just upset because she can't handle a high-profile client. Maybe if she spent less time spreading rumors and more time working, her little shop wouldn't be in trouble. The only trouble my shop is in comes from your fiancé's threats."
I met haar eyes in the mirror.
"Does Jonathan know you're planning to double-cross him too?" Veronica's composure cracked. She spun around, grabbing my arm. "If you ruin this for me, you'll what?
Destroy my business?
Tear apart our family? You're already doing that." "Girls, please." Eleanor stepped between us. "This is just wedding stress. We can work this out." My phone chimed, a text from Ethan. "Mom says you're causing drama at the fitting. What's going on?" Before I could respond, Veronica snatched my phone. "Still running to my brother with everything? Pathetic." She scrolled through my messages, her face darkening. "You've been investigating us? Getting Sarah to dig up lies." "The truth, you mean?" I reached for my phone, but she held it away. "The truth is, you've always been jealous of me. Well, here's some truth for you. The dress is paid for with a bad check. Your lease is being terminated next month. And you're not even invited to the wedding. I just needed your name and your work. That's all you're good for." Eleanor gasped. "Veronica, surely you don't mean—" "Stay out of this, Mother," Veronica snapped. Then she smiled, cold and sharp. "By the way, Dana, I'm having another designer make some adjustments to the dress before the wedding. I can't risk looking anything less than perfect." Something inside me snapped. Years of swallowing Veronica's insults, of putting family peace above my own dignity, crystallized into a single, clarifying moment of rage. I stepped back, surveying my creation, the dress I'd poured weeks of work into, that she planned to butcher and take credit for. "You want perfect? I'll give you perfect." "What's that supposed to mean?" I smiled, thinking of the alterations I could make, small, devastating changes that wouldn't show until the worst possible moment. "You'll see. At the wedding." Veronica's eyes narrowed. "Is that a threat?" "No," I said, gathering my things. "It's a promise. And unlike yours, mine will be kept." As I left, Eleanor called after me, but I didn't turn back. I was done being the family doormat. If Veronica wanted to play games with people's lives, she was about to learn that karma could be tailored to fit. The wedding invitation arrived 3 days before the ceremony. Not for me, but for Ethan and the kids. I found it on our kitchen counter, its gold lettering mocking me. "The honor of your presence is requested." "I told her I wouldn't go without you," Ethan said from behind me, making me jump. "But Lily and Noah are still in the wedding party." Mom's expecting them there. I traced the embossed edge of the invitation. And what are you expecting, Ethan? He sighed, running a hand through his hair. I don't know what to believe anymore. Veronica swears you're making up stories about Jonathan, but Sarah showed me the evidence. Which you didn't believe until someone else confirmed it. That's not fair. I'm trying to. My phone rang, Jenny from the boutique. Dana? There are people here. They're saying they have a court order to inspect the premises. My stomach dropped. What? Something about code violations? They're taking pictures, measuring everything. Should I call our lawyer? I'll be right there. I grabbed my keys, but Ethan blocked the door. Dana, wait. Maybe if we all sit down together. While Jonathan's people try to shut down my business. Move, Ethan. But by the time I reached the boutique, the damage was done. Yellow violation notices plastered the windows. Inside, brides-to-be were gathering their things, whispering among themselves as a man in a suit handed out business cards. Lovely space, he said when he saw me. Shame about the structural issues. And the health code violations. And the expired permits. What permits? He smiled, reminding me of Jonathan. All of them, apparently. We'll need you to cease operations immediately. For public safety, you understand. Jenny appeared at my elbow, clutching a stack of papers. They're saying we need to refund all outstanding orders. Today. That would bankrupt us. Yes, the man said pleasantly. It would. My phone buzzed, a text from Veronica. Heard about the inspection. So tragic. But Jonathan knows some excellent real estate agents if you need to sell. I deleted it without responding, then noticed an email from Chicago Style magazine. They wanted to interview me about the rumors surrounding my business practices and relationship with the Brooks Hastings wedding. Dana? Jenny's voice was small. What do we do? I looked around my boutique, at the dreams I'd built, the lives I touched. Then I thought about Veronica in my dress, smirking as she destroyed everything I'd worked for. Start calling our clients, I said finally. Tell them.
The door chimed.
Eleanor swept in, looking worried. This is all a terrible misunderstanding. If you'd just apologize to Veronica, apologize. I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. For what? Not letting her destroy my business quietly enough? She's family. Surely we can. Family? I gestured at the violation notices. This is what your daughter does to family? She's running a scam with Jonathan, and you're helping her. Eleanor flinched. You don't understand. Veronica needs this wedding. Jonathan's investors aren't real, I finished. Just like his business empire isn't real. But you don't care about that, do you? As long as your precious daughter gets what she wants. Dana. Ethan's voice. He must have followed me. That's enough. No, it's not enough. I turned to face him. Your sister is about to destroy everything we've built, and you're still defending her. I'm trying to protect our family. Which part? The part that's lying or the part that's helping them do it? The silence that followed was deafening. Eleanor dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. Ethan stared at the floor. Outside, I could see potential clients walking past, reading the violations, hurrying away. My phone buzzed one final time, Sarah. Just heard from Mark. Veronica's telling everyone you tried to sabotage the dress. The magazine's running with the story. Dana, I'm so sorry. I looked at the wedding dress hanging in my workroom, beautiful and poisonous. I'd poured my heart into it, and Veronica had turned it into a weapon. Well, two could play that game. Jenny, I said quietly, cancel all appointments for the next 3 days. I have a wedding dress to finish. Dana, Ethan warned, whatever you're thinking, you should go. I cut him off. You'll be late for your sister's wedding preparations. As they left, I locked the door behind them, flipping the sign to closed. Then I walked to my workroom, picked up my scissors, and began to plan. The morning of Veronica's wedding dawned bright and clear. I arrived at the Drake Hotel early, dress bag in hand, and found Sarah waiting in the lobby. You sure about this? She whispered as we rode the elevator to the bridal suite. I patted the garment bag. Just make sure you get those documents to Jonathan before the ceremony. The suite was chaos. Bridesmaids, makeup artists, and Eleanor fluttering around Veronica like anxious butterflies. She saw me in the mirror and smiled, all teeth. Dana, I didn't expect you to deliver personally. Wouldn't miss it. I unzipped the bag, revealing the dress in all its glory. The gasps were genuine. It was my finest work, even with the modifications I'd made last night. Veronica ran her hands over the silk. It's perfect. Try it on, I suggested. Make sure everything fits. As she slipped into the dress, I caught Eleanor watching me suspiciously. But the alterations were invisible. The weakened seams, the strategically loosened beading, the hem shortened just enough to make walking treacherous. Something feels different, Veronica frowned, adjusting the bodice. Just pre-wedding jitters, Eleanor soothed. You look stunning. My phone buzzed, a text from Sarah. Documents delivered. Jonathan's reading them now. I smiled. Well, my work here is done. Good luck, Veronica. You're not staying to help? Eleanor asked. I wasn't invited, remember? I was halfway to the door when Veronica called out, I know what you did. The room went silent. I turned slowly. What? The dress. She smiled, but her eyes were cold. Did you really think I wouldn't have it checked? Your little alterations were amateur hour. My stomach dropped as she reached for a garment bag hanging in the corner. Fortunately, I had a backup made. Exact copy, but without the sabotage. Eleanor gasped. Dana, you didn't. Oh, she did. Veronica laughed. And now I have proof. The magazine will love this story. Respected designer tries to ruin society wedding out of jealousy. Jealousy. I stepped closer. You and Jonathan are running a scam. Sarah just delivered proof to your fiancé, bank records, court documents, everything. Jonathan already knows about those. We planned it together. She smirked. Did you really think he'd believe your little investigation?
The door burst open.
Jonathan stood there, face ashen, holding the papers Sarah had delivered. But it wasn't our evidence he was clutching. Care to explain this? He thrust the papers at Veronica. My lawyers just found them. You've been transferring money from my accounts for months. Veronica's composure cracked. Darling, I can explain. To the police? He turned to the bridesmaids. Show's over, ladies. Weddings canceled. No. Veronica lunged forward, but the altered dress betrayed her. The weakened seam split. The shortened hem caught her heel, and she stumbled. The backup dress went flying from her hands, landing in a punch bowl. You planned this, she snarled at me. You knew the dress would fail. I knew you would, I corrected. The dress was just insurance. The real trap was making you think you'd caught me. While you were focused on my amateur alterations, Sarah was following your money trail. Eleanor stepped between us. Girls, please. Stay out of it, mother. Veronica snapped. This is business. No, I said quietly. This is family. And you forgot the first rule of dressmaking. Always check the lining for hidden flaws. Jonathan was already calling his lawyers. The bridesmaids were fleeing. And Veronica stood in her sabotage dress, watching her carefully constructed world unravel at the seams. You've ruined everything, she whispered. You did that yourself. I just made sure everyone could see it. As I left, Eleanor called after me. Dana, wait. But I kept walking. In my purse was a copy of all the evidence, enough to save my boutique and expose Jonathan's schemes. The magazine would get their story, but not the one Veronica had planned. My phone buzzed one last time, Ethan. Just heard what happened. Coming home. We need to talk. I took a deep breath, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying someone else's dreams. It's about refusing to let them destroy yours. 6 months after the wedding that never was, I stood in my newly renovated boutique, pinning a wedding veil on a beaming bride. The magazine article had run, not Veronica's planned exposé, but a piece about small business resilience and fraud prevention. The publicity had brought in more clients than ever. The bell chimed, and Eleanor walked in, looking smaller somehow, more human. She waited quietly until I finished with my client. "The place looks wonderful," she said, running her hand along a display of silk samples. "The new lighting really shows off the dresses." The settlement money from Jonathan helped. I straightened a mannequin's collar, though I suspect that was more about keeping his other victims quiet than any real remorse. "Dana, about that day." Eleanor paused. I should have seen what was happening. With Veronica, with everything. "You saw what you wanted to see. We all did." She nodded, pulling an envelope from her purse. "This came for you. From Veronica." My hands froze on the silk. "Where is she?" "Treatment center in Arizona. For..." Eleanor swallowed. "For compulsive behavior and trauma. She asked me not to tell anyone, but you deserve to know." I took the envelope, feeling its weight. Inside was a check, repayment for the wedding dress, and a note. "I'm learning to make things instead of breaking them. Maybe someday I'll understand why that was so hard before."
V.
The bell chimed again. Ethan walked in with Lily and Noah, carrying takeout bags. Our Wednesday family dinner tradition had survived, though now it often happened in my workroom between fittings. "Mom," Noah ran over. "Aunt Sarah's having a baby. Can you make her a special dress like you did for Mrs. Peterson?" Speaking of Sarah, Eleanor said carefully, "She and Mark are hosting Christmas this year. Veronica might. She's thinking of coming." The old tension rose in my chest, but it felt different now, less sharp, more complicated. "We'll see." After Eleanor left, Ethan helped me close up while the kids did homework in the corner. "You okay?" he asked, watching me sort through fabric swatches. "I'm not sure," I admitted. "Part of me wants to believe she's changed. The rest remembers every other time we gave her another chance." "Maybe it's not about chances anymore," he suggested. "Maybe it's about boundaries. You taught us all something about those." I thought about Veronica's note, about Eleanor's visit, about the family we were slowly rebuilding. You know what the strangest part is? When I was planning my revenge, I thought it would feel better, more satisfying. But seeing her fall apart that day wasn't what you expected. It just made me sad. For her, for us, for all the years we spent dancing around the truth instead of facing it. The shop phone rang, another bride-to-be seeking an appointment. As I reached for it, I caught my reflection in the workroom mirror. I looked different than I had 6 months ago, stronger, clearer, more myself. "Dana?" Ethan touched my shoulder. "Whatever you decide about Christmas, I'm with you. Really with you this time." I nodded, thinking about Veronica in Arizona, learning to create instead of destroy. About Eleanor, finally seeing her children clearly. About my own journey from victim to victor to something more complicated and true. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Ultrasound today. Need a bridesmaid dress designer for the baby shower. Know anyone good?" Winking face. I smiled, picking up my sketchbook. There would always be more dresses to design, more stories to tell, more chances to get things right or wrong. The trick wasn't in being perfect. It was in being honest about who you were and what you stood for. Actually, I told Ethan, "I think I might have an idea for Christmas. Something new." Because sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's simply living well, setting boundaries, and leaving the door open just enough for hope to slip through. I opened my sketchbook and began to draw, thinking about new beginnings and old wounds, about family and forgiveness, and about the delicate art of mending what was broken without erasing the truth of how it broke.